Ms. Fassbender, thanks. Ms. Killer, Mr. Bergstrand, Ms. Kopczynska, Mr. Eriksson, ladies and gentlemen. As the host of today's annual conference, I am delighted to welcome you to the Federal Ministry of Transport here in the Erich Klausner Hall. As you see, a very nice room. It is the first joint conference of FT for EU and FT for all. Both research projects target the practical implementation of the regulation on European freight transport information, starting in July 2027. The regulation is intended to increase the digitalization of freight transport inspections across all modes of transport in the future and make them more efficient and faster. At the same time, it is to reduce mistakes and avoid language problems. This endeavor requires IT infrastructure that is compatible across Europe. The regulation obligated member states to establish gates as part of the European IT infrastructure. In Germany, we have commissioned Toll Collect to develop the gate function. The enforcement agencies need to be connected to that environment. The Federal Logistics and Mobility Office is the German authority actively involved in the project. It will be the first authority to implement digital inspections for the carriage of goods by road in Germany. We will hear many interesting presentations about the current status and developments throughout today's conference. The private sector is responsible for establishing platforms that include the data records to be transmitted to the inspectors on request. One of the research project's objectives is to help develop and test these infrastructures. Today's conference is an opportunity for the project partners to exchange views and also talk to representatives of the business community who are not yet familiar with the topic and are here to learn more about it. Ladies and gentlemen, freight transport is one of the vital lifelines of our economy. The logistics industry is Germany's third largest sector after automotive and trade. It provides employment for 3 million people. It is not only on Germany of such importance, but all over Europe. By driving the digitalization of freight transport inspections forward, we are supporting this sector in Europe, helping to reduce red tape and making it fit for the future. And the future is data, not PDF documents or even paper. This is why the logistics sector is well advised to pay close attention to this matter now. In the beginning, the link to FT will be voluntary. However, companies should not wait for it to become obligatory, but seize the opportunity to both digitize their freight documents and perform digital inspections. Germany is one of 8 EU member states that are funding the FT4EU with a total of 28 million euros, along with various executive agencies and private companies in the EU. FT4All has an investment sum of 15 million euros and 33 partners, of which 6 are EU member states. Third funding project, named FT4Life, has recently been approved by the European Research Authority and has been kicked, as I heard yesterday. It is the largest FT project with 16 member states and an investment sum of about 47 million euros. Germany is committed to this project too. We believe that this digital transformation project will bring enormous opportunities to improve freight transport. But good physical infrastructure is equally essential for optimal freight transport operations, also with a view to Europe's competitiveness, because Germany is an important transit country. At the moment, we have major challenges to tackle in this area. Unfortunately, our transport infrastructure is not yet as efficient and reliable as it should be. Extensive investment is necessary. Much of this will be financed from the National Special Fund for Infrastructure and Climate Neutrality. We will particularly invest in the maintenance and digitalization of the railways. Therefore, it is good that just 2 weeks ago, the Coalition Committee made an additional 3 billion euros available for roads. So every project with a construction go-ahead can continue. In total, that is 2/3 more than in the last parliamentary term. Our federal trunk roads require major investments. The coalition government wants to establish the borrowing capacity of the Federal Autobahn GmbH to ensure sufficient long-term funding for federal trunk roads. Federal Ministry is preparing the rail infrastructure for the future with a corridor rehabilitation strategy. We are modernizing 42 highly congested corridors, tracks and points, signal boxes, sleepers and overhead lines. However, the necessary road closures are a major challenge, particularly for rail freight operators. That is why we will not, as a rule, rehabilitate more than 4 major corridors per year. This will reduce constraints on the network to an acceptable level. Everything is based on an evolved infraplan, which identifies the priority projects for the next 5 years and creates a binding commitment to implement them. The transport sector also has to continue to make its contribution to tackling climate change, but in a way that is economically feasible for businesses. For this reason, we have agreed to take a realistic and affordable approach. We want to make carbon pricing as key economic control mechanism. One thing is clear, the future of transport in Europe has to be climate friendly. That is why my ministry wants to advance and expand the use of alternative drivetrains and renewable fuels. I'm well aware that investments in alternative drivetrains pose major challenges for the industry, which is why we want to provide as much support as possible. To do so, we are pressing ahead with a nationwide, needs-based and user-friendly charging network for heavy goods vehicles. The federal government will exempt zero-emissions heavy goods vehicles from the tolling scheme even after 2025. And the Federal Ministry of Transport will provide financial support for hydrogen refueling infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, in addition to digital transformation, transport infrastructure and combating climate change, both you and my ministry have placed cutting red tape high on our agendas. To remain competitive, we have to do it. The federal government is openly committed to reducing bureaucratic burdens and avoiding new ones, where possible, both on national and European level. To this end, we have just adopted a modernization agenda for federal government and administration. eFTI is to help reduce red tape. 2, by minimizing processing times during inspections or even eliminating them altogether on motorways. In the Federal Logistics and Mobility Office, if the Federal Logistics and Mobility Office can carry out pre-checks simply by driving by, they will not have to stop and check transport operations without obvious irregularities. In addition, eFTI relies on digitally accessible data records rather than on documents. It is quick, reliable, and paperless. Red tape at EU level also needs to be reduced, since it is EU rules in particular that increase costs and place a significant burden on industry. Federal Ministry of Transport will actively and on an early stage support the reduction and avoidance of red tape at EU level. Germany will also advocate for the bureaucracy brake currently in place at EU level to be tightened and expand from a one in, one out to a 1 in, 2 out rule. This would make sure that Germany and Brussels are aligned when it comes to reducing red tape. Another important objective is to secure the supply of skilled workers in the logistics industry, particularly in road freight transport. We want to make it easier for companies to recruit young drivers. The federal government therefore wants to change driver training while maintaining high standards, to make obtaining a driving license more affordable, enable tests to be taken in foreign languages and introduce digital lessons. FT can also help make this job more attractive. Let's be honest. The young generation doesn't understand why so many paper documents are necessary. Having an app on their phones, however, is something they are familiar with. As you can see, there are many issues that are preoccupying and being addressed by the logistics industry. FT is designed to help simplify and accelerate road freight inspections, and by doing so, contribute to making this industry stronger. Today's conference will bring us a bit closer to this goal and to bring us in Europe closer together, because besides expert discussions, European solidarity is more important today than ever. On this note, I wish you every success and a fruitful conference. Unfortunately, I need to leave you right the moment because I need to jump into my next appointment, but all the best for you and this conference, and thanks for your attention.